Good evening, folks. It's Diamond with the Oppenheimer Ranch Project and Magnetic Reversal News, bringing you a grand solar minimum update Saturday, August 15th, 11 p.m. Mountain Time 2020. Goes X-ray flux dynamic plot showing a C2 flare kicking off 24 hours ago. Hours of powers. What does that mean? Solar cycle 25 is slowly ramping up, but the big story, riders hit by icy ping pong balls as hailstorm descends on cycling's Critérium de Dauphiné. No, that's really not the big story. But keep calm, it's boom time anyway. Dangerously intense, prolonged, and humid heat wave for most of California. Heat wave will be more intense, prolonged, and dangerous than previously anticipated. That sounds like a boom. Take a look at the map. A very strong ridge will amplify the in situ over and just east of California, bringing an intense and prolonged heat wave to the region. This is not due to global warming, period. What is it due to? Well, the jet stream. During solar minimums, times of weakening magnetosphere, the jet stream is less intense and zonal. The red line is the zonal flow, which we were coming off of for the last several decades at solar max. Most of the weather patterns were zonal. Only when we went into solar minimum every 11 years did we get into the meridional flow. Now, the meridional flow has been around for years and is increasing in its amplitude and its size. And this will be ever increasing for the rest of your lives. The meridional flow can bring temperatures directly from the equator all the way up into the Arctic and back down, creating blocking patterns and other treacherous weather patterns. Nothing to do with you. It's the sun, kids. California issues its first rolling blackout since 2001, according to the mainstream, as heat waves bake western U.S. Well, there is a heat warning about to hit the river in T-minus 44 hours. A 3-day trip locked into the hottest place on Earth, where the average daily temperature is expected to be 104 degrees. And we're going to be there live reporting on it, but you will not see the footage until at least the 21st. So there's that. So we're actually going to be recording in the hottest part of the world during the event. Now, the problem with the fact that they reported this first rolling blackout since 2001 is we reported on 15 blackouts last year. And here in this article, it says that California's PG&E Corp has imposed 10 intentional blackouts in 2019 alone. But NPR says California issues its first rolling blackout. I guess a rolling blackout for heat is different than a rolling blackout for wildfire. Different terms. We've never seen a blackout for a decade or more, 2 decades, except there were 10 of them last year. Hooga. Well, let's talk about power outages. Over 100,000 people without power in Iowa, 100,000 people without power in the unprecedented rolling blackouts in California that just happened 10 times last year. But Iowa is left over. Those are left over from the derecho that had a while ago. Now let's hear some of the facts and some of the information coming from the mainstream.
Severe storms have also ripped across the Midwest. This tornado tore through fields near Glencoe, Minnesota late Friday. At least 14 tornadoes touched down in that state, as well as Kansas and Illinois. Despite the damage, no deaths are reported. Big parts of Iowa, however, are still in shambles 6 days after a derecho devastated the state. The storm brought hurricane-forced winds, hitting the city of Cedar Rapids particularly hard. Today, more than 130,000 customers still have no power. The state's governor is being criticized for being slow to send help. At least 3 people died. The storm also devastated Iowa's crops. More than 10 million acres, roughly 43%, have been damaged. A federal disaster declaration is expected on Monday.
Holy macaroni, 43%? 10 million acres? That's what we reported on 3 days ago. Wow, they're picking it up. Now, a month's worth of rain, giant hail, wicked lightning, and crop damage is still being picked up in Minnesota. And tennis ball size hail and tornadoes is what's happening across Nebraska right now. Severe weather seen across Nebraska Friday night, from tennis ball size hail in Clay Center to baseball size hail in Sutton. Take a look at that twister. Mr. Twister. The tornado touching down in Stockholm was, well, these are the pictures. So there's that. Boom! Where are we? Major heat wave out west. Flash flooding in the mid-Atlantic. A major heat wave will consume much of the western U.S. over the next weekend with dangerously hot temperatures. Widespread excessive heat warnings and heat advisories are currently in effect for much of the region, including West Texas, which is the nexus of the Schmexes here in the Peach-ish region. Low humidity and dry thunderstorm potentials are adding to the fire danger across the Great Basin in the Northwest. Meanwhile, a system is producing heavy rain and flash flooding concerns for the Mid-Atlantic. Heads up, state line, Virginia, North Kakalaki, because there's a boom happening there. Now the C2 flare kicking off 24 hours ago, early in the morning. Took place this morning at 6:47 UTC from a plage region. Now that's a region that doesn't have sunspots, but has the potential for it. So we're getting C flares from plages. This should be well, you should be worried. And we've been warning 3 years about this event coming, and now it's here. And now we're reporting on it as it happens. Now what that means is that as cycle 25 increases and ramps up, we're going to see more C flares, and then we're eventually going to see M flares, and then we'll see X flares. Now, if an M flare, M5 or bigger, in my opinion, at this current magnetosphere depletion occurs, we could see some major perturbations to the grid locally, depending on the Earth-facing portion that actually receives the hit from the CME. X flare, all bets are off. Definite. If we get an X2, 3, or higher, we're going to see definite blackouts, long-term effects, and we're just waiting for that. And it's my position that within 2 years, we're going to see these effects, big time. But prior to that, we're going to see small perturbations. So it's an ongoing thing that will slowly roll out. So there's that. Seismic update, no quakes of note. General seismicity around the world is quiescent. Worldwide volcano news, we have Etna. Eruption at just moments ago, explosive activity has increased. We reported on Strombolian activity last week, and 2 years ago, we predicted that this volcano will take out tourists and will become more active, as we're seeing. So there's that. Cinnabon eruption news activity. It is increasing. We reported on the major outburst just days ago, and there are now continuous explosions, near continuous explosions at Cinnabon. The one you're looking at here is 3,400 meters or so, just about 10, 11,000 feet, one of almost a dozen over the last several days. So to be living in these villages has to be very disconcerting. Now, the major headlines in the climate change blogosphere is that warming Greenland ice sheet passes the point of no return. Now, this is partly chartical and partly factual. Now, what they're reporting on is the Greenland ice sheet. Now, if you want to get technical, they're referring to the part of the Greenland ice that sheets out into the ocean. And this is, in fact, calving off at record rates because Greenland ice has been growing at record rates. And now here's the paper that they base all this on. Dynamic ice loss from the Greenland ice sheet driven by sustained glacial retreat. It's not glacial retreat because the glaciers on the continent of Greenland are growing. In fact, the ice and snow data on Greenland is the most ever recorded in decades, and we're going to get to that in a moment. And in fact, scientists working on Greenland, I have video where they're going to corroborate everything I just said. So the mainstream puts the narrative as climate change and global warming has something to do with this, when we've been reporting for 3 years how Greenland has been gaining ice, the exact opposite. And we're correct. And they're correct partially. So if this was a Snopes, it would be wrong because they're only partially correct. And if it was Facebook, you would definitely be banned for a while. But let's hear what the actual paleoclimatologist, like myself, has to say about the topic. And he even laughs in the face of this woman who probably read the article and is completely worried about global warming. Just wait for the moment.
Well, as you mentioned, it's a quite important story, which has been looking at 3 decades of data. And what we see is that the ice sheet, the Greenland ice sheet, normally gains mass at the surface and loses mass with glaciers falling into the ocean.
Now, folks, this is called calving. And many global warmists or alarmists and mainstream media have picked up on the calving as evidence of global warming. But what he's pointing out, like I point out, is that this is the natural process of building ice on the surface of the continent of Greenland, then extending out into these ice sheets and calving at the margin.
And what they've noticed is that the glaciers which fall into the ocean have really increased their speed, and that more and more glaciers are falling into the ocean. So the situation is quite bad. But to say that we're going to lose the ice sheet, I mean, that is quite exaggerated at this point. It's clear that there's too much ice being lost, and so there's no equilibrium. But of course, what we're going to do today and the actions that we're going to take will have a big influence on the future evolution. And also the rate at which these icebergs are being discharged, at the rate at which these glaciers are falling into the ocean may still stabilize. So to say
may still stabilize? So here's the fraudulent nature of his report. And we're going to get to that right now, right before your very lives. We're going to go over to the NSIDC, which has been able to obfuscate the truth from actual global cooling for several years by manipulating the data and changing the graphs. But they can no longer do it because the surface mass balance on Greenland has turned a record turn. As early as June 20th, the red line is 2020. Surface mass balance was in the positive during melt season. That means more ice is being gained on the continent than being lost on the margin. This is the first time in decades this has ever happened. This is the first time since global warming began that this has ever happened. And so ultimately, as a glaciologist and a paleoclimatologist, we're going to see more calving and loss at the margins. Now, this is also mixing with salt water. This is fresh water mixing with salt water, and we've been waiting for the Beaufort Gyre to release. So what we're looking at here with this red line going above baseline during melt season is a very bad scenario. It means that record ice is building on Greenland, adding to outflow of record fresh water into the Atlantic, and this could trigger the Beaufort Gyre to release. If that happens, it would be similar to the day after tomorrow. And here we have more evidence of what's occurring. In this graph, we see 2020 in the baby blue or the light blue, and it is literally the lowest melt season in recorded history, in modern history. So that is something that's very telling right there. And if we come over to the polar portal here, which is the Danish Meteorological Institute data, we can see that on August 15th, we're still above the data baseline. But just days ago, we were building ice at the record of 6 gigatons per day in the middle of melt season. Greenland was building 6 gigatons of ice per day on the continent during the middle of melt, when it can lose as much as 6 gigatons per day. So the exact opposite happening in the last week on Greenland, a record ice gain resulting in record calving, resulting in those nonsensical climate change articles, which have nothing to do with warming or CO2 or you, and everything to do with natural variability controlled by the sun, the magnetosphere, and the cosmos. Now, more nonsense. Climate scientist is claimed by ice melt. No, he isn't. He was on Greenland and died last week. Do you know what that means? He died during the largest ice gain and snow gain in Greenland's history since 1981, maybe all time. He died when the largest amount of snow and ice was building on the continent where he was walking. Has nothing to do with melting. This is the most egregious lie about this man's life, and it's sickening. They should be telling the truth. He died when the most snow and ice was building on the continent, and he was walking around. He didn't know what was going on, and he fell through. Period. This is pathetic and sickening. If someone's life is now eulogized with a lie, what type of world are we living in? I'm sick. Entire cities could fit inside the moon's monstrous lava tubes. Hello, lava. Read the article. We've been demonetized. Did you hear? Now, I'm doing everything in my power to get us remonetized in the next 30 days. I can't even resubmit until September 11th. Isn't that bizarre? My resubmit date is September 11th, 2020. Illuminati much? Now, demonetization means that all the work we do on this channel for this video is free. Commercial free, and all the time I spent is free. So one way you can help us out is to share the video, subscribe to the channel, and come over and support us at Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you could be a supporting member. There are 28 $1 memberships remaining, 27 helping hands, and 71 co-creators. Once I hit this limit, that's all we need. So it's that simple. It pays all the bills, keeps the lights on, and keeps me producing over 70 videos per month. If you give $1, divide that by 70. That's 1.3 cents per video. I say that that's the best value on in the entire universe, period. That's a boom. Hope you got something out of the video. Proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. We're about to head out on the San Juan River and make one of the most exclusive, comprehensive, amazing documentaries ever seen. In the 27 miles we'll be traversing over 3 days, we're going to cover all of the geology, archaeology, and riverology that you can imagine. What you will glean from the documentary that we're creating is how to survive in the bush, how to live in a very harsh environment. It's going to be 104 degrees. And we're going to be in the center of a river going down a canyon that's inescapable for 27 miles. Well, actually, you can escape in the first 8 miles. But the next 19 are a bitch. And we're demonetized, so I can say whatever I want, period. Alien Allen, Ransom, Diamond, San Juan River, 2020. We're going to be in blackout. Yes, from August 18th to the 20th. No way out, no communication, plenty of food, plenty of water, plenty of gear, plenty of experience. So the documentary that you're going to witness after the trip will include everything you need to take a multi-day trip into the wilderness, all the rules and regulations for BLM and Navajo Nation, all the archaeological sites that are unreachable by the masses because you need these skills. And then the adventure, the hunt, the journey. Will there be flash floods? Will the river rise 11 feet in 6 hours? It's anyone's guess. And we're going to be there to document it all. Most important thing, at miles 17 to 19, we're going to see some mountain goat restoration that is unprecedented. And almost no wildlife photographers cover this because it's impossible to get to. But we'll be there because we know how. We want to thank all of the people, all 52 new Patreons that stepped up after we got demonetized. I am humbled. And we love you. We love each and every one of you. The most important person is the person that shares this video. We don't want anyone to donate above their means. If you don't have money, please do not become a Patreon. But if you do, give $1 a month. I think almost everyone in the country can give $1 a month, especially if you watch our videos. It's a good way to give back, especially if you're not a social media guru or if you hate Facebook and other tweeters or other things. The other group of you that like social media, please share this video. It helps our channel grow. It helps us stick the foot in the other. So there's that. Proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. We love each and every one of you. And my birthday's coming up, and this trip is part of the birthday celebration. And we're going to do our best to give you as much content as we can before we go in blackout. So we'll be going live in Bluff on the 17th. We'll go live here in Pagosa as well. And we'll take you through the process. As soon as we get out of the river and we get a signal, we'll also reconnect. We love you. Be safe. Boom. Hello. Oh yeah, click on one of these boxes to continue to support the channel and expand your knowledge. Be safe.